In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Dustin Melbardis, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Bryan Frye. Bryan, we're recording during the holidays. Things are obviously getting less stressful around the house. Time to relax, right?
Oh, of course. Why not,
Every single
watch
day,
Pacific
another.
Rim.
Oh yeah, gotta carve out time in that busy holiday schedule to watch a movie. We're not gonna spoil it yet, even though you already read the title by clicking on it. Well, it's not me and Bryan by ourselves. We've got ourselves a guest coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You may remember her from Deep Rising, Fargo, Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, a bunch of others. She's a favorite of ours. It's our special guest, JD Donnelly. Say hello.
Hello, hello. I am glad to be back at the table, Sir
Sir Dustin.
Dustin.
Yeah, I don't have like a cool moniker, and it's easier than saying my last name.
But you will in a second.
Very soon. That's right, audience. We got a special treat for you. JD, you are a very talented artist. We learn more about your talents every appearance. Please tell the people where they can find out more about your efforts and maybe the next convention you'd be attending.
Yes, I am what I like to say a creature creator, a purveyor of all creatures, real, extinct, and fantastical, whether it be through artwork or writing. Since last time I was on the podcast, my debut cryptid-themed novel came out, Crypto Zoo. So if you're a fan of, I like to pitch it as Creatures of the X-Files, meet the fourth wall wit of Deadpool, as a plucky chupacabra searches for her missing adoptive Sasquatch father, lost in New York City, at the hands of nefarious cryptid hunters. So she reluctantly teams up with the one and only Jersey Devil to try to find him and stop a cataclysmic prophecy from the Mothman. So, yeah, I tried to, like, a lot of fourth wall breaking humor, found family, and cryptids out the wazoo, because I am the creature person. That is why I love the movie we're going to be discussing today.
Wow.
Otherwise, you can find I go by the handle Painting Dragon Feathers across social medias, and next con appearance I'll be is SetsuCon, and I just got off the wait list for KatsuCon.
All right, we've got plenty of ways to get back in touch with and find JD's work. I had no idea about the book, which shows my preparation for the show, but that's right up my alley.
Heck yeah.
All right, well, it is. We're recording the holidays, but it is a new year. We're going to start with our guest. What movie in 2025 are you most excited to see?
Oh, I believe there's a new Jurassic World coming out after
Okay.
they said, like, no, we're done with Dominion. But so anything with giant lizards, especially the Jurassic titles,
Yeah.
holds a deep seat in my heart, and I am super excited for that.
Makes sense.
I'm trying to think what I've heard that's coming out in 2025, and I'm kind of drawing a blank.
That's all right. Luckily, whenever you see a movie, they tell you a bunch of other movies coming out. I like this idea. Bryan, what's a movie in 2025 you're most excited to see?
I've got a twin thing here. First one I'm really excited about is Wolfman. New Wolfman horror movie coming out. Really excited about that. And the second one is called Mickey 17.
Yeah. Oh, is that the sci-fi one?
Yeah, where Rob Pattinson's basically just a series of clones that they send to terraform a world.
Okay, I showed the trailer of that to Nathan, former host Nathan. And
super pumped for that one too.
Yeah, that one looks good. It also looks like original content story.
Right.
And the
Not a remake, not a reboot.
We are all. I think Bryan, you led the charge, but like Robert Pattinson, like he's kind of you got to see what he puts out.
So, just a quick backstory for you on that. I obviously did not enjoy Twilight, but after the first thing I ever saw him in was Harry Potter, and I was like, oh, here's
Yeah.
nice guy, could do
Mhm.
something. He ended up doing a movie almost right after Twilight called Remember Me, which was actually an incredibly sad movie. But after seeing it, I was like, he can act. So I was like, I think this guy's really going to do something. And it took me basically Batman before anybody took my ramblings about it seriously. And then I was like, see?
Did you see The Lighthouse?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
God, I love The Lighthouse. Loved it.
Yeah, I think
And
there's a
Uh,
big difference between
phenomenal
breaking the
job as
mold and just leaving the mold so far in the dust. Like,
Well,
like
Cosmopolis was good. Good Times was awesome. He was really
he
very subtly cranking out bangers, and no one
he
was getting it.
he definitely showed off his range in The Boy and the Heron as
Yeah.
the titular Heron. I didn't even realize it was him until the credits rolled. He did
yeah,
that well of a job.
Also, The King, the Netflix movie with Timothy Chalamet, he was awesome in that too.
Okay.
So anyway, I was preaching it for a long time. I'm finally happy that people know I wasn't just a crazy street preacher calling it to the
yeah.
heavens,
You
but
saw the diamond in the rough. You
yeah.
saw the potential.
You were right about this one. For me, this is going a little against type, and also the idea of me actually seeing a movie in theaters, the likelihood of that is very low, regardless. But I got to ask either of you two. This isn't about the movie; it's about the internet thing. Do you guys know what the back rooms are?
Yes.
JD,
There
you know.
actually there is actually a very fascinating there's a documentary series on PBS called Monstrum. They talk about different creatures of folklore and mythology and the history behind them. PBS on YouTube, they not that long ago did an episode of the lore of the back rooms and how the internet came up with the idea of the back rooms.
Right. Yeah. And the internet has really run with it. And I like when things kind of just emerge from something.
Mhm.
The Backrooms audience, if you don't know, is just kind of the idea of fluorescent lighting, yellow walls, corporate office space, just liminal space. The idea that this
Yes.
world exists behind and beneath everywhere you walk down the street. And the person I would say behind the original YouTube video, his name is Kane Parsons. He goes by Kane Pixels. They actually picked up an option for a movie. A24 is making a Backrooms movie
Oh.
in 2025, and Kane Parsons is directing it. Now, I'm not going to give away anything because there's nothing to give away in terms of content. But what started this phenomenon was just a talented artist with the program Blender, and he just created this world, and it's just become a phenomenon. Like I said, I don't normally run with those things, but this is something I particularly like. So that Backrooms movie, I might actually go see a
Yeah.
new movie.
I was gonna say A24, they've got their chops lately, especially supporting indie content. They funded the Has Been Hotel series to come to Prime off of YouTube, and yeah,
Yeah.
they're making great strides and a lot of cool stuff. A24.
Well, there is no need for us to pad our content. We we all can talk a lot about our show topic tonight, but we actually have a bonus question on our intro to the show, and we'll go with you, JD. Bryan brought this up earlier today, so we got to ask it on the show. What would be the name of your Jaeger, JD?
Now, a slightly blasphemous question because my counter question to you is: are you Team Kaiju or Team Jaeger? But to answer your question first, I would like to go. I think my Jaeger would go by the name Muerte Oceana.
Okay, so muerte, death. So this is what the death of the sea death, something like
Yeah,
that.
because I say the kaiju, they're coming up from the ocean. That
Okay,
phenomenal opening shot
yeah.
of the stars turning to marine snow. They are
Uh-huh.
giant sea creatures, so
That's a good one. I like the idea that we're doing all of this before we actually say what we're covering tonight. It's the best part of this.
Right.
Brian, what's the
If you
name of
haven't
your
figured it
Jaeger?
out by now, you're not a fan.
Yeah, yeah.
why are
They
you
know.
here?
Yeah, exactly. Now, anyway, stay. No, please stay. Brian, what's the name of your Jaeger?
All right, my Jaeger is going to be called Jester Hell. And this is hell as in Hel, as in a
Okay.
Norse pagan belief that death is an erotic embrace between death but between the dead and the lady who represents the afterlife.
Yeah, real thematic, both of you. That's good. That's good. Hel. You said that was Norse, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So mine, I went much simpler, I think. But it really has to do with I live in Texas, and it's real flat and brown and dusty here. But when people ask how I know how to do stuff, I'm a mountain man. So the name of my Jaeger is Mountain Breaker, and
There you go.
I did a little extra bonus work and translated it. In Japanese, it would be Yama Yaburi. So this is
Okay.
it was just something I
Yeah.
thought, like, yeah, hey, if
Yeah.
we have regional places that these Jaegers are coming from, we got to
Yeah.
tie back there. All right, let's kick off our last one here. What's the last movie you saw, JD?
The last movie I saw was Wicked. Oh wait, no, I lied. Last movie I saw was Gladiator 2. Wicked
Okay,
left a bigger impression though.
Sure.
all
Yeah.
right, Brian, what about you?
I just watched Die Hard with a Vengeance again the other day.
All of I like learning what Brian's comfort movies are. So whenever he
Yeah.
says watched it again,
Oh
it's good
yeah,
to know.
yeah.
For me,
Oddly enough, I would at least attempt to stand on a hill and say it's the best Die Hard movie.
hmm,
I'm not sure
yeah,
if I would fully plant the flag, but I would argue the point.
it's the one I saw most recently. But yeah.
As someone who has never seen any Die Hard movies, I have to ask though, is it a Christmas movie?
It is not. This happens in the middle of summer.
There you go. Yeah, putting that to bed. For me, this has been a whirlwind 2 weeks of movies for me. We just finished our 2024 lineup, all 50 movies we covered in 2024. So tune into that episode. That's always a fun time. But I finished that with The Hustler, which I will say it was part of a movement of movies that had redefined what a film could be for an audience. But otherwise, kind of a bummer. That movie. I will say, I think it's Jackie Gleason's best role. But I was happy to have watched it, and it finds its place on our list accordingly. Well, Brian, we've lingered long enough. What movie are we covering tonight?
We are doing the absolutely wonderful cult camp hit 2013's Pacific Rim.
That's right, with a budget of 180 to 200 million. Pacific Rim, starring Charlie Hunnam, Idris Elba, Rinko Kikuchi, Charlie Day, Rob Kazinsky, Max Martini, and Ron Perlman. It placed 34th in the box office that year, which was just above This Is the End and just behind Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa. The number one movie that year was The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. This movie has an IMDb rating of 6.9. For Rotten Tomatoes, our critics' tomato meter is 72%, and our audience score is 77%. It's kind of middling there. It was nominated for a couple of BAFTAs, a Hollywood Film Awards winner for Best Visual Effects. There's actually a ton of awards for this, and most of it about our style and our visual effects here. Truly, it would be an hour before I ran through them all. So you know that we've got at least a stunning capture on screen for the eyes. No distinction from the AFI. JD, you brought this to the table. What was your background with this?
I was there years ago. I remember catching this movie in theaters the summer after I graduated college, or it was like the summer I graduated college,
Mm-hmm.
and I was I was immediately enamored by the creature designs, the world building. I saw it at least twice in theaters. I think I saw it 3 times. I definitely saw it twice though, and I took 2 different friends to go see. It's like, hey, we gotta go see this movie. It's really cool. And I remember like that was like the height of the old Tumblr days, being on Tumblr when the fandom was high. Like there was the fan art, the fanfic, the theories, the AUs.
That's
And
yeah. What a part of, of Tumblr internet culture to really dive in and be wrapped up in all the fan fiction. Uh, well, hey, coming back to it this time, how long had it been since you last seen it?
oh, definitely a hot minute because I
Okay.
had to pull it out on Blu-ray. I had the Blu-rays. I do actually have the concept art book that has like all the back matter and the cool
Oh, awesome.
and the concept art and the behind the scenes stuff. So
That's
um
rad.
I know at one point I had a little knife head like clip on to like your headphone jack, but it fell off like twice and I lost it somewhere.
Yeah.
Knife being one of the names of the kaiju. Big goblin shark-headed guy.
Yeah. So
But
if it's been a little bit, did you have any different expectations coming into it for this, preparing for
it
this
had been
show?
long enough that when I watched it, I was like, I forgot how good this movie is.
Mm,
But
yeah.
it always has a soft, sunny spot in my heart because it's giant monsters and giant robots, and I saw it with my college friends and sorority sisters. So yeah.
That's a good primer for the second part of our show. Bryan, what about you? Have you seen this before?
Yeah, my best friend growing up talked me into going to see it in the movie or in the theaters, and I don't recall knowing that much about it. But I left the theater with the biggest grin on my face. Like it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing I knew about it going in was that Guillermo del Toro was director. And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
Guillermo del Toro. Yep, I'll trust it."
Yeah, I think there was enough marketing to be like you knew what this would be. At least you know what was going to be on screen for you as far as visual delights. But I think my expectation coming in was I remember my that this was something I went to the theater specifically to see because I knew, oh, you got to see it in theaters. And I think in the history of my like all movies in my life, I've only seen 3 movies twice in theaters, and this is one of them because it had such an impact on the big screen. Like I had to go back and see it again. And I'm lucky that in the town I live there's a dollar theater, so I just went and saw it again. It deserved a rewatch. And anytime it's on your screen at home, dear audience, it deserves that rewatch. Me and Bryan were talking before the show. Like this is a movie that it could be a rainy day. You could have got your shoes and socks wet as soon as you left the house, and then like your day is kind of ruined. But Pacific Rim, it gives you the kind of candy that you want. And when you're an adult, you can have candy for dinner. And I feel like that's what this movie is. It's just candy for dinner. And we want to talk way more about this movie, and we got a lot to say. But we're going to do it on the other side of this little ad break, just a little ad for our sister show. And then the other side, make sure you pause us because if you don't and watch this movie, Bryan's going to spoil the plot of it. So come back on the other side, and we'll talk about this movie.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we are back. And this is your last chance. If you have not seen Pacific Rim from 2013, now's the time to pause us, go watch it, and then come on back. Bryan, take the plot summary away.
alien kaiju erupt from the breach in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Humanity's best hope lies in the construction of giant robots called Jaegers, who need 2 drift-compatible pilots to run them. Enter Raleigh and his drift-compatible brother, and their Mark III Jaeger Gypsy Danger. But a deadly kaiju battle off the Alaskan coast leaves Raleigh's brother dead and Raleigh to work on a new Pacific Wall, which is thought to be the next big hope for humanity. This new project, however, leaves the Jaeger program to decay. Enter Marshal Pentecost, an old Jaeger pilot and last commander of the Jaeger program, who pulls Raleigh from the wall and suits him up once again in Gypsy Danger for a last-ditch push to end the alien war. Before they are able to execute their plan, a kaiju attack on Hong Kong leaves 2 of the 4 remaining Jaegers and their pilots deceased. Facing the end of the world, Pentecost, Raleigh, and the 2 remaining Jaegers take to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean to finally seal the breach. After a thrilling undersea battle, they take a nuke successfully through the rip and seal it for good? Question mark.
I'd seal it for good? Question mark. Oh yeah, it's a great way to end.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, who knows exactly how? I mean, we learn enough. This movie gives you some, and then you learn some. We know that this has all the mechanics to get butts in seats, right? Kaiju's and mechs, and this is the movie poster. It's all the marketing. I think we kind of know that's what we're going to get. But then our plot develops, and we've got something interesting, a story underneath all of the giant fighting. Um, I got to ask, we'll start with setting up this world. JD, I want to start with you. What do you think about this movie's exposition? I mean, I think the opening 5 to 10 minutes gives us a great feel for the world we're in. But what did you take on how it kind of eased you into this world?
I appreciate it. It actually was, while it was technically an info dump, it was an info dump that was delivered very well. And sometimes it does just do the, like, the Star Wars, it's the Star Wars wall of scrolling text. We
Yeah,
have main protagonist talking, so we actually get, not only is it an exposition dump, we're getting like the vibe of the main character through his narration off the bat.
that's a
We
good
get
point.
his mannerisms, the way he's speaking. Uh, Great visuals. Like the opening shot. I forgot how good that opening shot is, where the opening line is like, "We thought the aliens would come from the stars, and it looks like stars," but then the light shifts, and you see it's actually marine snow, and it's at the bottom of the ocean, and that just like hammers home how alien it is in the deepest parts of the ocean and what lurks in the dark down there. But no, like I liked how, like, it was fun. It was all the little attention to details in the world building, like how would the kaiju, yeah, okay, we defeated the first one and we memorialized it, and then they become more common and more of a common phenomenon. How, like, okay, kaiju now are a way of life, and how they're incorporated into society on the cultural level, the pop culture level. They're showing like kaiju game shows and news segments,
Yeah,
and to the point people are getting desensitized to them to a degree. Like, it's a very poignant metaphor that throughout the movie they refer to them as breathing, living natural disasters. They have like the category
the
scheme.
category system. Yeah.
It's like a hurricane, and as our main character Beckett says, you get to punch the hurricane when you're in a Jaeger.
Oh well, yeah, that's great. That's great, Brian. What did you think about how this this opening kind of sets us up? I really like what JD said about getting a taste of Charlie Hunnam's character's personality, but I feel like this is a step into we need to like full throttle the action, and so we're just gonna hit you with this info dump. What did you think?
I was totally fine with it. As zero problems. I liked the fact that you got right into one of the biggest questions I would have had they not shown it, and it's how did conventional warfare go toward killing these things?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy they just knocked that right out at the beginning. You got that fighter plane just doing no damage whatsoever, and then running into a spike. And eventually he says, what was it? 5 days and 35 miles later, or whatever. So, honestly, I could have seen a little more, but
Right.
Yeah, like pull like A Quiet Place and go backwards, do a prequel
right.
sequel.
Well, there is a graphic novel called Pacific Rim, Tales from Year Zero, I think is what it's called.
Oh.
And it goes into the guy who created Jaegers, how he got the idea for them, and yeah, totally worth a read.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, so we have crawling from the deep of the Pacific Ocean, these giant monsters that at first, as the movie goes like sort of gets you into the feel of it, hey, they're just a big threat. It's a big threat. They've done a lot of damage, but I really like the statement that we got used to winning. We figured out how to fight them, and we got really good at it, and that Jaeger pilots are heroes and rock stars, and that this is something where it's more so than the way that like we elevate a soldier in a US Army commercial. It's like, no, this is like to be larger than life, to have 5 kaiju kills, 11 kaiju kills. These are things that it's like, wow, that would be something that like you'd have a poster on the wall of your local Jaeger or your Jaeger pilot, whatever it is. And I just think that part of the world is, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. You're already are of the idea that like these Jaegers are important to the world. And so this is where I wanted to ask with a genre of giants. So we know that monster movies or kaiju movies, that with this genre we have certain expectations. JD, do you think that this movie tries to like set itself apart by how it handles the giant entities themselves, or do you think it succeeds more with like the details around the giant fighting, our smaller character plots?
Well, it is very obvious with this movie that Guillermo del Toro is a huge weeb and or otaku, and this is his love letter to the the mech animes, the Godzilla movies of years past. Um, but as of the handling of the kaiju themselves, again, like the metaphor of them being a natural disaster, and basically that they keep coming and coming and coming, and it's pressure on the it's like it is an uncomfortably close metaphor to climate change and the fact they have toxic blood. They're making the planet uninhabitable with all their toxic blood that's being spilled, and the aliens trying to terraform it through them. And when I give a creature design panel at cons on occasion, and one thing I stealing a quote from another anthropologist, Charles Dunbar. If you want to understand what a culture fears, look at its monsters. And the OG Godzilla is Japan's trauma response to the atomic bomb. So these kaiju in this modern era, and as presented in Pacific Rim, they are our fear of climate change and the weather just coming to decimate you. And that, like, even if the world pools all its resources, maybe it's too late. Will one single Hail Mary move save the world?
No, of course not. Well, I gotta say, it's a great comparison. I remember that Dunbar quote. You mentioned the same thing on our Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind episode. Is
Mhm.
look at the monsters, right? And that's what I kind of want to ask this next question is: do we want to search for the underlying themes of Del Toro, or do we want to just enjoy our meal of candy? I kind of feel like this movie was made, Brian. I kind of feel like this meal of candy are stuff to play with. This is where the movie shines. Unless you're going to tell me, well, it's actually the stuff. It's the small relationships underneath that brought you in.
I am happy that there is depth to this film, but that's not what makes me pick it up every year. Like
Right.
it's great to be able to say, hey, well, if you look at this, or this is a metaphor for that, and there's some depth to it. But I'm here for the pew pew pew.
Yeah.
So
Punch the hurricane in the mouth.
yes, and it's true. I actually think it's a better line when I know it's much lauded to talk about his speech, to get him all hyped up in this. I actually think the better line in all of it is, "You want to die up here on the wall or in a Jaeger?" And just the way he says it, I'm like, "Yeah, in a Jaeger, man. Let's go."
Yeah, we know what his answer is. Yeah, for sure.
And it's
Well,
funny because he's all like, "Hey, I've done my war and whatever." And as soon as he says in a Jaeger, he's like, "Yeah, I'll come."
And you all are
I
down
twist my arm.
like, may I offer some broccoli to this candy fest here?
yeah, we do have to
Um,
eat our veggies. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, not that you were necessarily downplaying the relationships, but it also is a point, like, Beckett's whole arc is about trauma and getting over trauma and finding a new connection from someone else who also had similar trauma. And just, I do want to talk about it in a minute, like how I thought it was interesting, like how all the different Jaeger pilots had different kind of relationship dynamics.
Mm.
So
Yeah, well, you know what? We've got several relationships, and honestly, it kind of looks like mix and match, but each of them is touched in on their own way, right? You've got Raleigh and Mako, Mako and Stacker,
Mhm.
Pentecost, Gottlieb and Newton,
Yep.
then Newton and Hannibal. That's its own little mini one, kind of fun one thrown in there. Then you've got Hercules and Chuck. You've got a lot of these relationships, and the thing is, we know that on screen each of these relationships, the amount of time that we get is really boiled down to the core. Because what we learned is Del Toro cut about an hour off of this movie,
Whoa, I
purposefully,
wasn't even aware of that.
an hour, purposefully. and part of it was due to like try to get it closer to 2 hours because he realized just how appealing this movie would be to kids. Now it's PG-13, not R.
Mhm.
And so this is something where we know that there's a lot on the cutting room floor, but so we're left with just the core of these relationships and also just the very core details about who these people are. So while I think I could probably just fan out over the big monsters fighting each other, the relationships are important. JD, you said you wanted to at least bring up one of them. Which part about these relationships are like, this is what, yeah, I think you had mentioned earlier. Like, I forgot how good this is.
Yeah. Well, like one thing that like I noticed in this watch through is that all the drift compatible Jaeger pilots, because
That's a
they're
thing.
all
Drift compatibility is a thing.
yeah, but they're all different kinds of relationships. There's a father-son one. There were
Hmm.
two brothers. There's a set of triplets. There's a husband and wife, and there's
Two people that just met.
yeah, two people just met but have a shared traumatic past or suffered very their empath. One thing I talk about, I think I might have mentioned in Nausicaa, the difference between sympathy and empathy. Okay, so if you're sympathetic to something, it's because like, oh, I can guess or kind of understand what you're feeling, but I myself have not experienced that thing. If you're empathetic to something, you shared that experience because you yourself had a very similar experience. So like, or even it had the exact same experience. And both Beckett and Mako lost family to kaiju. So it's
Yeah.
healthily explored trauma bonding that they're drift compatible and they
Yeah.
work out their like punching giant monsters in the face.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And
But
that's,
what I liked though was that all these relationships were presented like not one was better than the other. Like, oh, I'm more drift compatible because we're romantic. I'm more drift compatible because we're triplets. I'm like, no one was like lauded as being better or more efficient than the other. It just like the different values of different kinds of relationships.
yeah.
One can,
That's something where if this movie was longer or if there were more about the characters that we see on screen, we might have a chance to learn about their, especially the other pilots, the triplets, and then the Russian couple that they are. Yeah.
I do admit, like when a movie does have, you mentioned that they cut an hour off of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. But this is also where the beauty of like I said, the fandom and the fanfic and the fan art come in. So maybe I have more attracted to like these interpersonal character relationships and the kaiju in general, just because was in the fandom and I did see it all on Tumblr
Yeah.
and like people were like sketching out the characters themselves because of only the little bits of info we got off the screen.
Well, how frequently is it that a favorite character of a series is not a main character? I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's such a common thing. And that means that if you aren't given much of their story, then you are free to believe whatever you want or write whatever you want about it. Bryan, I wanted to ask you about these relationships. I thought, Pentecost and Raleigh have an interesting sort of, hey, you were one of my best guys. I'm bringing you back into the fold. But were there any other of these relationships that maybe on this watch you were keyed in on?
No, not really. I remember that, you don't really get any vocal time between the triplets or much at all with the Russian couple either.
Right, you don't.
It's kind of disappointing. I mean, I would like to know more. I would also, I mean, obviously there's an inexhaustible amount of time that they can do here, whether it's, like I mentioned, having the Tales from Year Zero and the start creation of the Jaeger program, Pentecost's early career and saving her. Then what happened during the 5 years that Raleigh was out of action, because they clearly went from a crap ton of Jaegers to 4 super quick. So they could do a movie just on the losses sustained between Gypsy Danger going down and the last Shatterdrome. So I don't know. There's so much content that can be made here, and I want to see all of it.
So yeah, the content that we want to see, or the content that is almost there that we don't get. This is going to lead me, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. Now, this is something I've been saying for the last 11 years. Is that to me, Pacific Rim feels like the end of a trilogy, but it's because of all of the things Bryan just mentioned, that like there could have been so much about those 5 years from when Gypsy Danger went down, and the rest of our Jaeger Corps fell apart. We in the movie go from biggest category 3 ever to 2 category 4s at once, to 3 at once, 2 category 4 and a category 5. This all happens within 45 minutes. It's pretty fast. On
So
top
you're
of that,
saying it escalated quickly.
I am.
Well,
And
I think
on top, oh, go ahead, JD.
also I think part of it too is just these things are already godlike sizes and proportions, both the
Yes.
kaiju and the Jaeger. So I thought like it was very important in the beginning to show, sorry guys, Gypsy Danger getting her ass handed to her
Right.
by Face or
By
Knifehead.
Knifehead.
But to show these are not unstoppable gods. These can be taken out, and they can suffer damages. They can be defeated, and that did awesome to lay out the stakes at the start. So it's just like, oh, they're gonna be super powered the entire time, and it's just gonna be watching two elephants headbutting and not moving. It's like, no, okay, the kaiju can get the upper hand. They can overpower the Jaeger. It is not.
Absolutely. And you know what? It that's something that it kind of, I'm not going to say it wears on you, but what it does is it really leans on you that these kaiju are, as the movie progresses, getting stronger and stronger. The deck is getting stacked more and more against the Jaegers. I mean, going from 4 to 2 in 3 minutes,
Mhm.
109 to 112, all of a sudden our super Russian punch bot, who's designed to look like a missile silo with legs, which is just so cool, with accompanying music, by the way.
I will say
And
Chernobyl Alpha is my favorite Jaeger out of the movie.
and with style, and we got to devote some time to it. But and then also with Crimson Typhoon doing a pretty slick move and then immediately being gone. 3 minutes time, 109 to 112. When you think, what were their stories? Gosh, wouldn't that have been a great 3 episodes of TV? Or wouldn't that have been an awesome graphic novel to read? Like you said, the Year Zero stuff. Or I believe I just read today that as of 6 months ago, we have now been approved for Legendary Entertainment, the same company that put this one out, is developing a prequel TV series for this
Ooh.
movie with screenwriter Eric Heiserer. So this is the thing that I always thought this movie wanted, was it needed, I think we ramped really fast, and I would have liked for that ramp to be a little more of a grade. But also, I'm not a guy that likes a 3-hour movie. But there's a lot here with what you just mentioned, is like these godlike things aren't undefeatable. Every blow seems like a knockout blow, and every threat is an ending threat. Uh, this is like, it's just knockout punches being thrown left and right. The movie doesn't let up. In the first 10 minutes, it said to us, we got used to winning. But man, in this movie, we face defeat after defeat, more loss, more death. We move on to the objective. JD, with these monsters and with our Jaegers, the being able to visually see these titans fight each other, I feel like that had to just put you in your happy place.
Oh yeah, especially I love the creature design that went into the kaiju themselves and the naming conventions. You could see, because I'm a huge animal nerd. I'm just taking one look at these kaijus, like, oh, they drew this animal, this animal, this animal, this animal, or like this mythological figure and stuff like that. And I said I have the art book, so it goes into more detail. But like how and also the fact that they like pay attention to like that a kaiju is so unimaginably large. It's like a walking ecosystem. That's one reason why I love the movie Cloverfield too, but I can't really watch that one because of motion sickness issues. But like the fact that the kaiju have lice, the fact that they treat it with as they talk about like, oh, there's a second brain in the pelvis, like the dinosaurs did, which makes biological sense. Though I think that is actually an outdated theory at this point, but I digress. But like looking at like Knifehead, for example, going to the sea monster aesthetic, Knifehead is the big kaiju at the start of the movie that takes out Beckett's brother Yancey in the original Gypsy Danger. The head is based on a goblin shark, a deep sea creature that is really freaky looking, so it fits the sea monster aesthetic. And bouncing back for a second on like what we're talking about, like you had to raise the stake, like the idea of power creep and stakes. Like how do you
good word.
Like, godlike entities. Nathan likes to throw around the term power creep a lot, but how do you like get an audience to empathize with these godlike entities, show they can be defeated? It's almost like you got to root for the fallen hero. But yeah, the whole there is an idea in like literature. The idea, it's called spectacle, and the idea is that these things are so massive, and all these like I said, like these, you have Gypsy Danger taking a ocean liner and using it as a beat stick against Otachi. It's so ridiculous that it's spectacle. So like those humbling moments that they can be defeated, and the human core is like, it grounds the idea of spectacle and brings the audience to empathize the characters and the situations more. So yeah, all for the giant robots and the giant sea creatures, but we do need that gooey human emotional center to pilot said giant robot punching said giant sea monster.
And sometimes there's an appendage that's just really good at ripping that part out. And gosh, does that yank at your feeling as an audience, being like, it was just like because every punch could be the knockout punch. It's just, oh, that ended pretty quickly, and we were lucky to get this.
One of my favorite writing quotes ever I got from this, indirectly from this movie. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to look it up who specifically said this, but I remember back when the movie was out, a lot of fans were tweeting back when Twitter was Twitter at Guillermo del Toro and like the directors and the writers, asking like, hey, is there any chance that the Chernobyl Alpha's pilot survived, or Crimson Typhoon's pilot survived? Like we want to see him come back. And unfortunately I can't remember specifically who responded. I do remember it wasn't Del Toro, but they said a line that I've carried with me as a writer and writing stories and just storytelling in general: heroes cannot exist in a world where heroes cannot die. So they, as little screen time as those characters had, I still felt the emotional gut punch every time I watched them go down on these movies, because you get the sense that like, oh yeah, they're not coming. It's not Marvel. They're not coming back in some weird way. They're gone. That also hammers home how dangerous the stakes of these movies are. And so it's not just like, oh, we're going to have cool kaiju sword and like I'm in a giant mech armor that can never be destroyed. Nope, Del Toro is not afraid to kill off his characters.
I want to touch on that topic a little later, but Bryan, I want you to weigh in on these fights. I mean, we brought up the stakes, we brought up the heavy-hittedness of them. It might just be the beauty of the splashing ocean around them, but this is a movie that when you put on and that smile begins to creep in, you say, oh yeah, Pacific Rim. I think these fights are a big part of it.
I agree. I think one of the biggest misses from this, and I understand you can't overuse it because you want it to be a wow factor later on, but I don't think any of these Jaegers needed chest-mounted rocket pods. Like where's just the big axe? Like obviously these melee weapons are what really turn the tide, and it only gets more gaudy and uprising, but like clearly they weren't onto something quite yet with all of the munitions when maybe the old ways are better.
Yeah, and I think we talked about like, okay, the sword comes out maybe a little too late, but I think there's also just the fun movie making of, they might not need the chest cannon, but we get to animate the chest cannon. and this is something we got to see. And I also want to bring the handheld plasma caster, whatever that is. You see, especially JD with these kaiju feel like matter. They feel like organic matter.
Oh
They
yeah.
they react to physical blows primally and ferally almost. And then
Well, you try hitting a rhino with a baseball bat, of course it's going to react badly.
Yeah. But you brought up the blood earlier. I think it's not that we're saying, oh, this is this is good because it's a gore fest, but I feel as if, and the goblin shark is just so plain to see, but then we get two that are quite unique later in the movie that just expand upon how what a smorgasbord of delight that is as
Oh yeah,
someone with
yeah, we got the double feature Otachi and Leatherback. We got the Brawler and with the electronic pulse, which is it does
unfair
occur, which
unfair.
it does occur in nature. Look at electric eels, which are actually a type of knife fish. They are not eels, but not out of the realm of natural possibility. You have that. Usually acid is reserved for the insect kingdom, but you got Otachi spewing acid, and also with her handtail there. Yes, I said her because Otachi, you do find out, is pregnant.
That's
And
right.
I have a personal theory that even if the overlords that were sending the kaiju over and were going to colonize the world had won, and like they succeeded and they managed to get rid of humanity and they had a world for themselves, I have a theory they would have wound up in a Jurassic Park situation, because why was Otachi carrying a baby kaiju if all the kaiju are cloned? Life finds a way, even if it's not life from our own Earth. So, but and obviously, if you look at the baby, you can actually tell it has the frills shapes like Leatherback. So I'm gonna take a stab that Leatherback is the daddy, but
But it also led to one of the most hilarious statements of the entire movie, and it's when they're talking in the thing. It's like it fried all their equipment. He goes, "Gypsy's analog."
yes, Nathan.
I was like, perhaps this man doesn't understand what analog is. Just Gypsy's analog. I actually laughed out loud in the theater when he said that. I was like,
Honestly,
yeah.
Beckett might be an emotionally attuned himbo.
What else do we think about the I'm not going to say the science of this movie, Brian, but just the progression of what we understand. I feel like this movie takes your hand and shows you I think pretty smartly the things that we learn along the way. Was there anything else that threw a wrench into your enjoyment of it this time, Brian?
That statement didn't disappoint me the first time. I just thought it was really funny.
Oh,
Yeah, that's one of those statements where you're like, man, I can't wait to talk to somebody about that and just unpackage his assumption that his Jaeger that has a nuclear power reactor is the equivalent of a 1960s diesel truck without computer chips. But
okay, for the record, I watched this with Nathan, and he did laugh at that line, and then I said like. And he said, like, there's like, yeah, nuclear reactors are apparently fairly analog.
I get it, but I mean, they touch a lot of buttons in Gypsy's control panel, not to mention the electric sword they wield. So it's just like, yeah, I think there's some computer chips in there.
somewhere in there.
This is definitely a movie that takes to heart the rule of cool.
Yeah, right. Well, and again, that's why it's funny. It's funny, and you let it go and whatnot. But I mean, it is. You'd have better luck convincing me that Cherno Alpha
Exactly
would be less susceptible to it than Gypsy Danger.
There's a third member of the Cherno Alpha who's like shoveling coal into a furnace.
Right.
Yeah. But Brian, what else though about like we've got some things that are incredibly unique, like the neural link, the neural handshake, drift compatibility. We have the idea of the breach is one way it seems, and all the previous bombs have failed because they don't learn the secret tech until later in the movie. that only the kaiju DNA opens it, like I think described, like scanning a barcode. This is stuff I feel like the movie, as far as holding the audience's hand, that kind of, I think it all progresses well. I say it's like I'm not here to say it's some kind of masterpiece in storytelling, but I think it presents these things to you in an order that's like easily digestible, whether it's ridicule worthy or really novel. What do you think?
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that it could have gone way worse. I think there are movies, I'm not going to say like this in terms of its uniqueness, but I think there are movies out there that are campy that made one too many dialogue choices that don't make sense. And the ones that you're willing to let go of in this one are so few and far between that, sure, the neural bridge is weird and maybe a little overly complex or underly explained, considering who all can do it and can't do it and whatnot. I thought the whole fight sequence where she had a bunch of people come fight him to find out who's draft compatible, I just thought that was silly too. But
Yeah, it might not
there's
make the
not
most sense.
there's not
In
a
writing, we call it the hand of the author. You can see,
well,
like, I need to do these motions.
it's like, hey, you know what would be really cool while we do all of this is I want to have a cool, Kimbo stick fighting sequence with Raleigh versus a bunch of people. And
Me too.
here's the thing,
Hey,
I
it
I
does
didn't hate it. I didn't hate
Exactly.
it.
lead
So
to one of my favorite flirting tropes in shipping, the flirtation through combat between Mako and Raleigh.
right. So, but I guess my point is like, there's not enough, and it's not strong enough to dissuade you from enjoying the film.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Well, let's talk about that relationship, JD. I've brought it up so many times. It was the only, American media education I ever had was a 3-hour course at college, but it was a lot of American media tropes. Gosh, romantic love has got to be in there. But in this movie, we got something a little different. JD, what'd you think about our Raleigh and Mako?
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. Like, yes, while drastic circumstances can, and obviously stake of storytelling, you expect some speed and emotions growing, but the idea is, but I appreciate how they handled the Raleigh Mako relationship twofold. A, they were able to empathize with each other because they both have a shared trauma, and B, they worked together to get over it. I think I did remember seeing like commentary like when there's actually a fair amount of female, like, focusing on Mako, there's a fair amount of female gaze in this movie because like we see that shot of Raleigh with his shirt off and you see the circuit board singed marks on it. That's a very like, in a movie like this you would almost expect to see more kind of male gazy gratuitous fan servicey stuff, but you don't. You get a little bit of reversal, and I appreciate, like, at the end that, yeah, you could say that you could see, like, okay, the seeds are there that they might foster a romantic relationship. And Raleigh even says at the end, like, I didn't think about the future before while looking at Mako. Um, but you know what? I can start thinking of the future now. I'm hopeful. And it's because, like, everyone was living in survival mode for so long. There was
Mm-hmm.
no real such feelings. And the fact that they don't share a kiss at the end is awesome. They just do the affectionate head touch. It's like, yeah, they could be really good friends, or it could blossom into something more. That's
Perfect.
Yeah,
It's
no, I
perfect.
thought they handled it very well. It was a refreshing breath to see a not non-romantic relationship.
You don't have to shoehorn it in. You,
Yep.
you don't have to have that as part of what makes a movie complete. And leaving it in that state, I think, made this movie the best version of what it could be.
So I say you almost get kind of like, which was also a popular ship I saw in all the shipping and art and stuff, was the two scientists. They also kind of have a non-romantic romantic relationship development. They come to trust each other by the end with their drift combating with the kaiju
With the
brain.
kaiju, yeah. Well, let's talk about our. I think we can add all of these characters in as comic relief. I I think that this movie goes over the top with its dialogue. And what I mean is there's a lot of things about this movie that are top shelf, like our fight blocking, like our creature design, like the visuals of the water in all of these fights, and how the camera from beneath the waves, from above the waves, even when you're deep at the bottom of the ocean, that nuke goes off and the water's gone momentarily before it all
Oh
comes
yeah.
back. The inspiration of that. Gosh, I don't know the name of it, but that old wood block painting of like the Great
Oh,
Wave.
Ukiyo-e.
Yeah. Um, this is stuff where it's like you can tell that the creative chops were there, and it's not just a love letter. It is truly homage to the genre it comes from. But I started all this talking about the dialogue. Did you feel as if it's we know? I'm not even going to say it could be, it couldn't be. It's very cheesy at points, and it's and over the top in that sense. But doesn't that kind of make you love the movie more?
Oh yeah, it endears you wholeheartedly to the characters, which is why when they get hurt and or killed off, it hurts legitimately. But also, if it was all grimdark serious, you'd end up with like something more akin to like a, I don't know, Christopher Nolan film or Ridley Scott. Like the quirky charm is part of the Del Toro touch.
And that's where, with the quirky charm, Brian, let's bring in our two scientists and Ron Perlman. So
Yeah.
we've got Newt and Gottlieb, with Charlie Day and Bern Gorman. But then we've got we've got Perlman in here. Were these welcome sights for you on screen? I know that's not what made you buy the ticket, but I thought that was a real nice add to this movie.
Ron Perlman is value added to any film,
Okay, yeah.
especially if
Agreed.
his
100% agree.
his execution in this of that character, and even his explanation of how he made up the name, like completely irrelevant and hilarious. Like his value add to this, like there are aspects of the two scientists that actually aren't needed in this film at all. That's the reason that I literally didn't even bring him up in the recap, just because it adds a completely, that you have to explain too much to say very little. Although Charlie Day brings his own humor to the screen here on this too, and having the Perlman piece is obviously a benefit to the film. It is relatively inconsequential.
Sure, but it's inconsequential to the plot of the movie. But I don't think it's inconsequential to the success of the movie.
No, I don't either. And I'm not trying to state that.
Yeah, you're not downplaying.
Obviously to have the neural bridge with the kaiju, how they figure out how to make it all work in the end. So it is a mechanism of the film. I'm just saying that if they had figured it out a different way and none of that had happened, all that we would have lost out on is the charm that is the franticness of Charlie Day and Ron Perlman being Ron Perlman in a different way yet again. Frankly, every time I see him in a movie, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to get out of you, but I'm going to like it.
And his character name Hannibal Chow is such a just a straight up homage to Hannibal Chew in Blade Runner. Like this movie isn't secretive about what it's paying homage to, and I think that's great. You know, watching this, and we were talking a little bit about the Turtles a couple weeks ago, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we were talking about the things from our childhood that are like
Thank you
they're
for
a part of
specifying
you.
which turtles.
Those turtles, the Teenage Mutant Ninja ones.
And the only ones that, if you're thinking about Ninja Turtle movies, it's the one you're thinking of that we're talking about. We're not talking about any of the other ones, and I don't really have to say anything else. It's
exactly
the Ninja Turtle
it's
movie.
the one you're thinking of. It's the one we would be talking about, right?
I'll
But
be
so,
fair.
so I bring up the Turtles because it's a part of your childhood, and so I feel like a movie like this and a genre like this will bring you back to the things of your childhood. And me and Bryan were talking about walking out of this movie as adult men, and just like the part of our heart that is filled by like, yeah, giant robots fighting giant monsters. Like that's, you're gonna have that. And JD, you talked about how you dragged your friends to come see this with you, that you saw it a second time, a third time.
Yep.
What other media does a movie like this make you think of when you watch it? And it puts you in that happy place.
It honestly reminds me of, I often refer to this movie as live action anime because
Yeah.
it has the quirky, almost to caricature characters. It has the ensemble cast, so there's someone for everyone, every fan to like. It has the cool robots. It has the cool creatures. It has the powers, the stakes, the weaponry, the world building, and like it's been a while since like I've and like there is like definitely different nuances and flavors between like Japanese storytelling and like Western storytelling, and so obviously like anime from Japan does have its own like distinct storytelling and beats and such. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like Guillermo del Toro being a huge fan of Japanese culture and anime in general. You can see him taking those storytelling cues for literally live action mecha anime.
What was that word that you said earlier? Where you said that he's basically showing us he's a big weeb, and then you said otaku.
Okay, like I said weeb and otaku because the verbiage has changed. When I was young, otaku was the like socially accepted word and weeb was the dirty word. Otaku is a the original term is a Japanese term. It means like stuck in the house. It basically in originally in Japan it means, it's like kind of derogatory, meaning like, oh, you're such a nerd obsessed with your fandom, you don't leave your house.
Oh,
Like
okay,
think like the basement dude bro in a Western version. But
sure.
then when I was like growing up as a teen and young adult in college, in America at least, because we were getting importation of anime and manga at the time. It was not, now it's mainstream. This was like, not to sound hipster, but I was bullied for liking anime, but like back in the day. But so this is like when it was starting to get a foothold, more and more popular over in America though. And so it was otaku got kind of reclaimed in the West for a while as like, oh, I'm an anime fan. Or when I was in college, my sorority, for lack of a better word, because it wasn't officially a sorority, was the otaku hall. So we were like the nerdy hall, the sci-fi fantasy anime hall. But talking with the young people now getting into anime, it's kind of switched, and now otaku is like, oh, I don't want to, I'm not an otaku. That's the like derogatory one. I'm a weeb,
Oh,
which
okay.
is like weeaboo. So that's why I was like, depending on who's listening to this, that's why I said like, oh, Guillermo del Toro, he's a weeb and or otaku.
Well, I brought it up because there, as far as the reception of the movie, we had a lot of praise from other filmmakers. Ryan Johnson, high on the film. Hideo Kojima, who's
Uh,
huge in the video game world, says it's the ultimate otaku film. And he said he would never imagine he would be so fortunate to see like a love letter like this. And so this is the stuff that like it reminded me of is uh, it reminded me of the Gundam series. Now, the
yep.
thing is, what I seem to think about Gundam series, Gundam stuff, and I don't know very much of it. I only know the stuff from the 90s that they showed on Toonami after school, Gundam Wing.
Yep.
And I know there's so much more, and I know I dare not step into that because I might get sucked in. I might really, really like it. It's big giant robots. But
Not the
what's
love.
what seems to happen in those shows is there's a lot of it seems like there's a lot of like glancing blows or hand to hand fighting, or the kills are like robots, like they're not people inside. And so that's what I just thought this movie compared to uh like an anime show where there could be 100 punches thrown and both people walk away at the end. That's why the weight of the fighting in this seems so real.
Oh
And
yeah,
this,
there were some great shots in like the very beginning when Gypsy Danger was getting ready to fight Knifehead, where you just see the sheets of rain coming off her. Like
mhm.
you just get the sense of scale of how big these things actually are. Or like one of my favorite combat shots is when Gypsy Danger's fighting Otachi, is like when the hand goes through the office building and then taps the little
The Newton's cradle, yeah.
Newton's cradle. But you get the sense of like, oh, it's big enough to punch through an office building, but like that was like a good visual humor pun. But just the sheer scale of it, it punched through a building. She was dragging an ocean liner to use a melee weapon. Like,
yeah, put that. Yeah, you got to walk into battle with that ocean liner on your back.
Yep.
Brian, but did this call back at any of like the stuff from your youth of like the things that you were like, oh, this is why I feel so full, is because it reminds me of this other thing that gave you that feeling when you were young?
I mean, I guess the easy answer would be Power Rangers. I remember watching like OG season 1 Power Rangers.
Right.
That would probably be the closest. I never did Gundam, although I'm aware of what it is. I don't really feel like that's what I was getting out of this. I was always a big Godzilla fan, so I think I just like destruction like this of a scale. Like, you never root for something like this to actually happen, so you have to watch it in a film and you're like, wow,
Sure.
Check out those buildings just get knocked over, and some of the creative ways they decide to do it too. So it's really, for me, it's really just about getting to watch something on an epic scale more so than it was reminiscent of something I enjoyed in my youth.
So you were in it for the, drumroll please, the spectacle of it.
Yes, very much so.
Well, I think that we've got plenty more that we can talk about with this movie, but I'd like to do it in our superlative section. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of these to go through. JD, who is the MVP of Pacific Rim?
I'm gonna go with Otachi.
The kind of rapid, the one with all the tricks.
Yeah, the wings, the tail, the immediately lethal spawn coming out of her.
I really liked the visual of there being kind of a frog-like bladder.
Oh yeah, the throat swelling, and then she spits acid. I am a Dilophosaurus fangirl from way back in the Jurassic Park days. I am a fan of poison spitters. She even has the Dilophosaurus. She even has a twin crest going on, like reminiscent of the Dilophosaurus.
Yeah, and extremely menacing too. That one was when all of the changes through that fight really make you feel like hopeless. Like this, what on earth are they going to do? Oh, take out the knife. Yep. That'll do it.
Just sashimi it.
Stabbing still works, y'all. Brian, who's your MVP?
Every time stabbing works. My MVP is giant robots fighting giant monsters. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna be the basic here, and I'm just going straight for it. It's watching giant robots fight giant monsters. That's the win.
That's the win. Yeah, for me, it's our director here. It's Del Toro. I think he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He did it. The pieces surrounding the giant robots fighting giant monsters is all good enough. It's not like the pièce de résistance of storytelling, but it's enough. And then the little pieces, the little glimmers that come along with it, I think are charming, and I find myself liking it instead of waiting for the next fight. And that sometimes happens in movies that focus on a lot of action. Is all right, sure, yeah, but when are we getting the next fight? No, I think it's kind of neat how we roll these things together. JD, who's your best supporting actor?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Ron Perlman, just because it's I know it's low hanging fruit, but he just comes on with such a fun character and such fun presence. I'd say my second choice for best supporting actor would actually be the Russian actress, because she had like very cool commanding voice in the brief the brief amount of time we saw her in the fight, like she had a cool kind of commanding. Like you could tell she was a combat veteran, and she knew her stuff.
I think we only hear her. I don't think the guy says anything.
No, he doesn't say a single thing in the movie.
But I think that's also like, I mean, he looks
Do you
like
need
the
him to?
kind of guy. He looks like the kind of guy that doesn't say much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They did not have to go like bleach blonde with them, but I'm so glad they did.
Yeah.
Bryan, who's your best supporting actor?
I went with Charlie Day on this. I think his wit is one of the least appreciated things. Like I know some people find him obnoxious, but and this probably has some hangover from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like I might be giving him additional credits due to
He'll earn that for the rest of his life.
yeah, like he's getting dividends from other things, but
right.
I did like him in this film. Although I know I've said a few things that kind of discount the scientist's position within the film. I'm not sad they were in it by any means.
Also, kudos to Charlie Day because he was a very full-bodied actor.
Yes.
Like he was able to pull Twitchy off very well when he was having like brain issues from melding with a kaiju, and just full body running around, launching himself into rubble and like all this stuff. Like he was good full body acting.
Yep.
Yeah, he was. I didn't give it to Charlie Day, although I could have. I was really debating. Rinko Kikuchi as our Meko Mori. I thought about this being my number one, because the hardest part for me is whenever it's am I in support of the character, in support of the performance, and I think I was really distracted by the idea that we all have become familiar with the Bechdel test, but in that amount of time since that was created, they've actually named a different style called the Meko Mori test, which is, do you have a female protagonist that is of equal, we'll say, power to a male protagonist who has her own storyline? And in this one, even though they are weaved together, her arc is her own. It's not inherently tied to Raleigh's. And I thought that was kind of neat. I didn't dive too much further into that. And just because there's not a space for it, I thought we haven't mentioned at all Hercules Hansen, the dad of the father-son group duo. In total, they share maybe 5 minutes on screen, but I thought that was an interesting sort of relationship, and the idea of having to watch your son go on a suicide mission. That was an impactful short scene at the end. So
yeah,
that was a pretty good job. That's just me throwing out a bunch of actors' names during one category. JD, who's your hidden gem of Pacific Rim?
Hidden gem. Oh, actually, did any of you catch the Portal 2 or Portal cameo? The robot voice Shatter Dome is GLaDOS.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It's the same voice actor.
So this truly was a triumph.
And she is operatically trained too. It's really cool to hear her opera singing.
I think there's a line in Portal 2 where someone said, and they use that line in this movie. Someone calls out, "Quick, release the neurotoxin!" And it's absolutely a tie to Portal 2. What's your hidden gem, Bryan?
This is where I went Ron Perlman. I think that if you gave it enough time, he's one of those people that you could forget is in this movie until he shows back up again, and you're like, "Oh yeah!"
Hey, he's so much fun, and if you didn't watch till the very end, this does have an after credit sequence where
alas, not setting up the Pacific Rim universe, just
just for fun. It's just for fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hannibal does pull out his butterfly knife and have time for one more line. My hidden gem is somebody we didn't talk about this whole time. The actor's name is Clifton Collins. He plays Tendo, and Tendo is kind of the guy in the van who helps with communications with the Jaegers while they're out fighting, kind of in between Pentecost. He's just kind of the techie guy. This role isn't enough for him. He's not given a chance to show his personality in it. But I've seen this actor before, Clifton Collins Jr. He's a guy that looks like he could be a tiefling broker. He looks like in a supernatural show he'd be like a slimy lawyer working for a high-ranking devil, or like a villain with money and power, not brawn. But here he's just the techie in the van. He plays a really interesting character. He's Lawrence in the Westworld TV show. So this guy is a hidden gem for me because of what I know he's capable of, and I feel as if maybe he was fleshed out more on the cutting room floor. All right, JD, is a tough one. Who do you recast in this movie?
Well, you just mentioned him, Tendo, because he reminds me of another actor. Because you're talking about how he kind of like slimy, but who also has great range and can do empathetic, nice characters. Steve Buscemi. And that'd just be, he's also up there with Ron Perlman for me. Like, if I see him pop up in movies, like, heck yeah, Steve Buscemi.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve Buscemi in this world to me seems like he could run a third-party discount Jaeger parts store.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, he shows up in the Jaeger that he's built from trash and saves the day.
Oh, and he and Hannibal Chow have like a long-standing beef.
Absolutely, they do. We're writing Pacific Rim 3, you and I. Bryan, what's your hidden gem?
There actually is supposed to be a Pacific Rim 3 that's been in the works for a while. It's called Cataclysm, but it keeps getting put on hold. It was originally supposed to be released in 2025.
No one.
We'll see. I am actually excited about this prequel series, and I will read that graphic novel. I was looking it up today. What's your recast here?
My recast is Rinko Kikuchi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would have taken Chikai Kuramaya or Will Yun Lee from Wolverine. Like, I wanted her to be a little creepier and a little less dew-eyed. And I feel like both of those actresses kind of give you this, you know, you can be vulnerable but also be dangerous. I never got dangerous from her, and I don't know. I needed it to be a bit more edgy character.
You know, I think that would be possible. There's fight training a little bit, bow staff fight, but there's not enough fighting. I like the idea that the people that run fighting robots are fighters. I don't like the idea that the Chinese triplets are holding a basketball all the time. I want to see them doing kung fu with each other. I want to see their Jaeger doing kung fu. I don't want to see the Russian husband and wife walking menacingly. I want to see them punch a heavy bag so far it explodes. And so if we had more fighting, then maybe we'd have a chance for our Mako Mori to seem more dangerous. But we only had that one instance. But I think I know the sentiment you're talking about.
Dustin,
my recast,
more violence.
So she be little, she be fierce.
Well, I do need more violence all the time.
The Will Yun Lee line I'm thinking of is from relatively early in the Wolverine. She goes into the bar. He's fighting those guys who poisoned the bear that sent him into a crazy piece. She's got that samurai sword with her, and she just executes this one line so well where she gives the name of the sword, and she says something like, it means separator because it's good for separating hand or head from body. And I just like, it was just so
That's good.
threateningly given that it's like I needed a little bit more like I can do bad things to you. So yeah. I don't know. There was a little too much like naivety and dewy-eyedness from her, and I needed someone who could add a little sting.
I feel that for sure. For me, yeah, I am going more fighting actually, but it is. Hey, I like the Perlman. I like Ron Perlman, but I'm actually recasting him here.
No.
Instead of Perlman as Hannibal Chow,
Provocative.
I have Colin Chow as Hannibal Chow. Now, Colin Chow isn't in a lot of movies, but you will know him from playing the role of Seraph in The Matrix Reloaded.
Oh yeah, he's good.
And I think the reason I want to go with that is is the whole concept I just mentioned before, is that I'd like there to be more in world fighting instead of just giant mech fighting. But that's just me indulging all the stuff I like, and this is a movie about all the stuff I like. I just want to add more of the stuff I like to it. So like that's all that is. Nothing against Perlman. I actually really like that portrayal. What's the best shot of this movie, JD?
Ooh, as much as I love that opening shot of stars to marine snow, I think my other favorite shot is when Otachi has taken Gypsy Danger to the stratosphere, and you just see the curvature of the planet underneath her when she whips out the sword and just
Cuts him in half.
Yeah,
cuts her in half, like just so anime in space, planetary curve in the background.
yeah. No, that was sick. What's your best shot, Bryan?
It's the game time shot. I don't know what the move is called in martial arts, but it's once the neural bridge is connected and Gypsy Danger does the
Yeah.
freeze. Like nothing. Every time I saw it, I think I did it like 2 or 3 times, and I was like, game time, let's go. Did the thing, let's go.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the
cool.
shot that showed off the rain.
Right.
That's right. And there's also a cool like adjacent shot for all those is when the mechs themselves are being helicoptered in, and like that moment when they land is sort of like, okay, ready, fight. Like that I really dig. My best shot, we've talked about it a lot. It's Gypsy Danger dragging a shipping liner behind her as it's time to fight a mutating Cat 4 kaiju.
Was it a shipping liner or was it an oil tanker? I was thinking it was an oil tanker, but you may be right. Maybe it was from all the containers. Maybe
it was just something that like whether you want to think of it as wielding it like a bat or like a sword, it was just like I got my weapon now. You've got all your tricks. I got my beat stick. I loved it.
It's the big boat, and we don't have Nathan here.
That's wild. Yeah, that would we got to the bottom of it if he were here. JD, what's the best scene of the movie?
Ooh. Can you hit Bryan first while I think about it?
Sure. Yeah, Bryan, what's your best scene?
I'm taking the entire Hong Kong fight.
The entire Hong Kong fight. Okay.
I mean, that sequence. I mean, you're illustrating not just the variety of what a Jaeger can do, where you get to briefly see the hurricane formation with the 3-armed Jaeger.
Yeah.
You got Cherno Alpha doing its,
comes in with the people's elbow. Yeah.
Yeah, and best Donkey Kong country. He's just beating on him, and then you got Gypsy Danger coming in with the retrofit with all of its new stuff, and not just the pulse cannon. And you get actually, I'll save this because it's going to ruin a different Sperling.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, I mean that is the movie. The Hong Kong fight sequence is that is the Godiva portion of your chocolate experience.
That is a great analogy. Since you took the Hong Kong fight, I'm going to go with the intro, the world building narrated by Raleigh, and how it was handled. It was fun storytelling as it was, because he had a narrative flair to it. We got a sense of his character. We got the sense he was talking directly to the audience, and we had the cool visuals with it too. We got to see how the world was shaped around the reality of giant robots and kaiju are a thing in this universe.
Yeah.
I thought it was an info dump, but it was not an info dump.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, good. And I also think that there's ways that could have been so like poorly done, and instead it's a highlight. Some people would say that they don't like the opening crawl of Star Wars. I think it works, but this really works there. I'm jumping in with the Hong Kong fight, but I want to say it's the part specifically where Gypsy Danger is fighting Leatherback one-on-one. And there's a reason I like that, is because that's what I wanted. We got one-on-one at the beginning. We got one-on-one with kind of the ape-like humanoid style kaiju. But the thing that I liked about it was that it was on land. I felt as if the advantage was the kaiju's in the water. But on land, I felt like we got to see an arsenal. We got to see Gypsy Danger putting her dukes up and coming in. There's an awesome part of that scene where after a couple big haymakers, Leatherback is like kind of facing the camera, about to turn around to get its shot in, and what you see is Gypsy Danger come in with like a full Nelson. It's like this is how, like, in a fight for real, somebody would take advantage. And it almost makes you think, like, it wouldn't have been crazy if this were like a street fight to see Gypsy Danger put like a finger in the mouth and like fish hook. That's an illegal move in most sanctioned fighting, but like fish hook this thing because, oh, you want to actually brawl? Let me show you. That was part of that opening sequence. Yeah, me and my
We're
brother,
pretty good in the fight.
we weren't yeah, exactly. We weren't straight A students, but we could hold our own in a fight. Well, then show me how your robot is a brawler. And I felt like it was that moment that we got to see that. A lot of options here, I think. JD, what's the best wardrobe or makeup moment of this movie?
Gotta go with Hannibal Chow. And where is his shoe?
Where's my shoe at? Yeah. No, it's a sharp, slick outfit. Bryan, what's yours?
I feel like that really is the pick. But for sake of variety, I'm gonna go with. Has there ever been anybody who made a uniform look good besides Idris Elba?
Makes it look good, man.
Like, he is sharp this
His
entire
uniform
movie.
is really sharp, and then when he's in Hong Kong, it's not really military uniform anymore. It's just a suit that he wears like one, and it looks just the same. Yeah, really
Yeah.
well done on his part.
Oh, can I add a honorable
Just
mention?
wearing the
Of
crap out
course.
of that suit.
Yeah, he is.
Honorable mention. I want to give a shout out to Newt's tattoos. That he's a kaiju groupie, and because it was a cool to see, like, as someone who does have tattoo art and was doing a tattoo art apprenticeship, to see how the kaiju got stylized into a tattoo aesthetic.
Yeah,
And it's believable that you would have kaiju groupies, and that would be one way that they would show their
yeah.
appreciation of kaiju is through some sick tat sleeves.
I agree. I actually thought his whole outfit looked good, especially since it's an easy outfit to get disheveled, and
Yeah.
Charlie Day plays disheveled very well. For me, it's I think we talked about it a little bit. The Russian pilots have so much style, but they don't get to say that much. I really like the idea that all the other pilots are wearing these like super like tight fitting nanotechnology like spacesuits like inside uh, of their Jaegers, but the Russian pilots are wearing like kind of an old cosmonaut style suit. It's not modern. They look retro inside
Mark
of their
one, bud.
walking. I think it looks so cool.
There's a point in time. This actually goes into what you're talking about with the Russians, but it's about Gypsy Danger as a whole. Despite whatever issues that they were having with the drift or whatever, every time you see any of the other Jaegers, they're loping, or in the case of Striker or Eureka, occasionally you get a little bit more of a run.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be Gypsy Danger. It should be Gypsy Swagger. Every time Gypsy walks, he struts. Like he's got a tanker bat. He struts.
There's a bit about how the Gypsy Danger has like art on it, the way that the nose of a plane, like a fighter jet, would have art, in the war. But they also mimicked the walk of like John Wayne entering a saloon.
Yeah. See,
Like
Gypsy
purposefully.
Swagger.
Gypsy Swagger.
And fun fact that you mentioned the nose art of the plane, Gypsy Danger, she got the name because from the Gypsy twin engine biplane.
Oh, that is
Yes,
cool.
it's a type of engine that she's named after.
Yeah. Okay. This is a tough one. We got to change one thing about this movie. JD, what are you changing?
Come back to me in a minute.
Okay, Bryan, what are you changing?
I need clarity or better understanding of drift compatibility. drift the first, after a while I just kind of gave up on it, but the drift compatibility thing and this I just thought was one of the toughest hurdles to overcome when I was just really wanting this to, be purely fun. And this is one of the parts in the honest trailers that I really agreed with. Where they were like, well, I guess anybody can do it. You get to the end and Idris Elba's like, I've had you pegged since day one. We won't have any problems. And it's just like, all right. And
yeah.
We're just chucking it. It's fine. He's the most experienced pilot. He can just do it with anybody. It's good.
I did like the part about drift compatibility where she gets lost in a memory. She quote unquote chases the rabbit and nearly destroys the whole Shattered Dome. But I think that would have been more impactful if that happens on some kind of other routine mission and like nearly jeopardizes an ongoing mission due to that neural link being off somehow. But there's nothing routine about this movie. We are on a doomsday clock the entire time. So there's no time to do that. Did you come up with yours, JD?
Part of me would actually want to see more about the alien, the hand that's puppeteering the kaiju. Like, not necessarily that they came out of left field at the end of like the third act of the movie, but maybe foreshadow them a little bit more.
Yeah, we don't really know anything about them. We get to see them for a bit right before they're blowed up.
Yeah. But like it just makes it kind of like flat as a antagonist. So I don't know, just maybe a little bit more depth there to the alien overlords. But other than that,
yeah,
and I think that was a big. I would want to know again if my theory would pan out, if the kaiju would overwhelm their alien overlords, and then they would just be Jurassic kaiju roaming free.
Jurassic Kaiju, the mashup in 2025. We didn't know we wanted.
God create man, man create Jaeger.
Well, I was just thinking, does it then become one of those like Planet of the Apes things where like Godzilla ends up being the great whatever grandchild of these kaiju that overran humanity the first time, and we had to start from scratch again? They are in fact the Titans are in fact descendants from the kaiju.
We're good at this writing thing, guys.
We should do this for money.
So change one thing. I already mentioned it earlier, but I really believe that this movie should be the culmination of a series or the culmination of more. Like maybe this is the second or like the part 2 that wraps something up. I feel like there's so much more to the Pacific Rim world that we didn't see. We learned about it, but we didn't see it. So I'd love to be able to see it. Hopefully this show does that for me. I will tune in. And strangely enough, I actually will tune into a TV show for it. But I was also thinking, is there a way to make it make sense? These things were built to fight kaiju. But is there a way to make it make sense to where all of the different varieties of Jaegers, they're not Jaegers, they're not built as hunters. Instead, they were doing something else on like other space colonies or something. They had jobs. And then they pulled them in to be like, none of our planetary defenses are working against these aliens. The only thing of that size would be this big lift loader bot. Wait a second. Put a sword in lift loader bot's hands. And then
let's duct tape a sword to a forklift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why have we never thought about that before?
Sword lift coming to theaters 2027.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have not read the graphic novel and I only vaguely remember the sequel. Because we had Charlie Day and his pal Herbert Newt, or rather, the two scientists. They managed to hijack into the kaiju's brain.
Gottlieb.
What if they ended up drift compatible and taking control of the kaiju and
awesome,
the kaiju?
Incredible,
so kaiju Jaeger team up.
Yeah,
they don't have to fight; they can be friends.
They could be friends. Well, no, they do have to fight. If I have a say at this writers' table, they have to fight, but they end up friends. We'll compromise.
They could fight against a common enemy.
Okay.
But my point being, like, let's have like a human piloted kaiju.
That'd be cool. All right, now we're gonna finish with our best quote, JD. The best quote of the movie.
Tonight we are canceling the apocalypse.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's a pretty good
Brian,
one.
what's yours?
Yeah, I'm gonna misquote this. I actually changed my mind a few minutes ago after thinking about the Hong Kong scene, but it's now I think he's dead, but we should check for a pulse. Turn around and shoots him like 4 more times. No pulse.
No poll. Yeah, no, that's good too. I actually, it is a really good, like, heroic speech, akin to Independence Day toward the end, and I almost picked that one, but instead I'm going with our Newt character, Charlie Day, talking to Hannibal. He's asking, like, what do you want a piece of kaiju brain for? And he goes, well, that's classified, so
But
I
I'm gonna
couldn't
tell
tell you even if I wanted to, but it is pretty cool.
So I'm gonna tell you.
So I might tell you. I'm gonna tell you. It's like just that little progression. Charlie Day plays it so well. Just a welcome addition. All right. Well, yeah. This. It was a lot of fun talking about this movie, but we've come to the part where we rate this movie out of 5 stars. 5 being the highest, 0 being the worst. But we do 0.5 intervals. So if you want to give half stars, you may. JD, how do you rate Pacific Rim?
I would also rate it a 4.5. Great visuals. The visuals stand up very well, and I think a part of it is because they did lean a lot on practical effects. The CGI also stands up for the era it came from. It's of the era where there's battles in the dark and you can actually see what's happening.
Yeah.
Excellent world building, fun characters, fun one-liners, great creature design, giant robots punching giant sea monsters.
Yep.
What's to love?
Brian, how do you rate this movie?
I gave it a solid 4 stars. This is joy on film.
I'm going to share JD's sentiment here with 4.5. I think that the cheesiness of the dialogue, the amount that we want to see that we don't get to see, the idea of all these relationships, we're only getting a core. I think it works, but I want more. And there's times that you want more, and that makes the movie better. In this case, me wanting more just knocks it from being a 5-star movie. Like I said, this is one of the few movies I've ever seen in theaters multiple times. I felt like this is one of mine. Brian, we've mentioned this before. Movies that are like one of yours.
Yep.
This is one of those. I remember, like, we looked at each other last year when we were ranking our top 10 movies of 2013, and I think somebody had Pacific Rim at number 2, and the system on our show is you have to wait if somebody has it higher. So somebody had Pacific Rim at number 2.
I think it might have been me.
And I said, wait on that, because
And
that was my.
I remember being like, ah.
Yeah, yeah. Is that it's even with that rating, it's still a favorite, and I think it's great. It gets my recommendation as well. We got to pick a movie for next time. Brian, can you help me with this?
Oh, I certainly can. All right, so selection for next week. Option 1, Blithe Spirit, 1945. A man and his second wife are haunted by the ghosts of his first wife. Option 2, I Married a Witch, 1942. A beautiful 17th century witch returns to life to plague a politician, Wallace Woolley, descendant of her prosecutor. Option 3, The Ghost and Miss Mirror, and that's 1947. In 1900, a young widow finds her seaside cottage is haunted and forms a unique relationship with the ghost.
Now, I've actually only heard of one of these before, and had
I've got
no
nothing.
idea. I had no idea that in 47 we were doing seaside cottage haunted by a ghost that becomes friends with protagonist. I got to go with option 3, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Good options.
All
Thank
right.
you. And
Thank you.
JD, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me once again. It's always a pleasure to come on the Retro Movie Roundtable.
I think you're our champion. You are our most returning guest, and we're happy to bring your expertise to the show. So thanks again.
Yeah, call me if you need more monster stuff or mythology.
And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. We invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contribution is much appreciated and will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Bryan?
The arrogance of men is thinking nature is in our control and not the other way around.